Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'll do a bit of, it's not an emergency repotting, but it will be very soon if I don't get on with it. This came about when I did the last in the set of the 2020 project orchids, the cooler, shadier ones, and we actually picked up one of the Miltoniopsis and had a look at it, and I said that media is getting a bit stale, and the positioning of the plants with roots going aerial and things all had the hallmarks of not waiting much longer and getting on with it, basically. Because I've got separate plants to do in one session, I am giving my scissors a go in the alcohol. Now, I've said before that this was told to me by somebody who works in an environment where this would be very relevant. The alcohol itself doesn't kill the pathogens and all that sort of stuff. It's the rapid evaporation that does that job. So when you soak your stuff in alcohol, you need to take it out, and that rapid evaporation that takes place at that point is what does the job. Apparently, allegedly, and all that sort of stuff. You can set fire to it as well. That doesn't do as much as you think it does, because it's like with petrol. Petrol doesn't burn, it's the fumes. So the petrol itself isn't really burning. It's the fumes coming off it, same with the alcohol. Mind you, there's better use to put alcohol to. Well, I should remember not to dip my scissors in that. These shortening days are catching me out. I was busy doing something else, and I just sort of looked round and I thought, it's getting dark. Why is it? It must be tea time. I had to look at the clock and it's not tea time, but it is starting to get dark. So we've got all the lights on. It's that time of year. Right, this will be done in parts. Now, these never got proper labels. I think while I'm at it, they might get proper labels this time. Because they were all bought together and dealt with together, there were 3 different colours. There was the one that was really, really dark, the yellow one, and the pink one. And I only put labels in 2 of them because process of elimination meant if I know what 2 are, the 3rd one is the one that those 2 aren't. Did that come out right? Yes, I think so. These stakes were put in here to hold things still and allow the roots to get going. Now, it's not the end of the world, but I really do not want to get these muddled up. So I want to try and keep them, you know, keep their colours known to me. Now I'm going to go the Michael McCarthy school of delicate. See, now these are not good roots. They went in there with very little roots, and they haven't done much about it, have they? What I don't want to do is damage anything, so a lot of this work, where I would normally go like a bull in a china shop, is actually going to be done under the tap. In other words, I'm not going to mess about with these roots too much, so that we don't bruise them. Oh, there's a real smell of mushrooms as well. So a lot of this is gonna, I know it'll bung me sink up, but I just want, you know, we have got some roots in here that are okay, but not many. And I was suspecting when we looked at this that we had 2 plants, and yes, we have. It's often the case. Right, so that piece is viable, even though it's a climber. The problem is this one. This is my new growth round here, yeah? So this was a growth, followed by this one. This one's going to have these bract leaves taken off. Do that now. The reason being that once this new growth now exposed starts to produce roots, they need to get into the media. Now, if you look at the height here, I'll just put a stick across there, that'll do the job, won't it? That new growth there, that's its height. That would be where it would need to sit in the media. Look where the other bulbs are. Look where the one round the back is. I can't plant it like that. And this is the trouble with the Oncidium types that climb. What do you do when you pot them? Well, first thing we need to do, there's a solid lump of dead roots there. They're serving no purpose. It's just a lump. We'll take that right off. You can see the wood for the trees. Oh, that looks a bit dramatic, but that's dead. There is no point in keeping that. Now, what have we got here? There is some good stuff here, not a lot. As I said, a lot of this is just going to get rinsed off under the tap. And if a little bit of old media clings to it, rather than break a root, I'd rather it just stayed there. I don't want new roots coming off. So that's probably all I'm going to do, and I'm going to run that under the tap. I've still got a, what am I going to do? How am I going to plant this? Now we've got choices here. Long term, if I took that piece off, I have got some roots and I've got a new growth. That would leave me 2 old bulbs, 2 or 3. That would leave me a cluster of 3 old bulbs, all at the same height above the ground, with some roots, not many, but with some roots that are perfectly capable of starting a new growth. That would give me 2 plants. So that would mean taking that piece off. If I leave it where it is, I can't plant it. If I take it off, so I'm desperately looking at the rhizome that I've just broken, because these did look like they had fusarium when I got them. I mean, somebody who would know that sort of thing took a look and said no, they haven't. It's just a stain, basically. So that's a piece, a viable piece. Not many roots, but it could push some new roots out given the right environment. So we'll put that in the sink. That's a piece with a new growth. New roots are going to come on that quite soon, yeah? But in the meantime, it's got to survive, which it will do because it's still got some roots with growing tips coming out of the previous growth. So we'll give that a rinse under the tap as well. And then there was the other piece. Now what have we got here? We've got the same problem here. If I get my stick out, there's our new growth. even the end of the stick's rotted off. If I take my new growth where the roots are going to come out, it's halfway up that bulb. But this one's not quite so dramatic. On this piece, I think I can take that one piece off. Just that one piece. And that gives me a bulb, another one, and a growth that is just starting some new roots. Just. Carefully take that sheath off. That gives the roots a position to come out and get straight into some media. So that is effectively one plant. Next decision is this all going to get potted up separately or all in one pot? It's going to wobble around like hell if it all goes in one pot. But then the pieces could be strapped together and then strapped to the pot. We could mount a piece. A Miltoniopsis mounted. Well, they're epiphytes, that's how they would grow. Unfortunately, they are cloud forest dwellers, so you know that environment. Quite honestly, in that cloud forest environment, the environment is such that plants can survive with hardly any roots. Now in the wild, they don't get disturbed, they don't need repotting, so the roots they grow just stay there, and new roots will be produced at appropriate times, but they can survive with very little roots on the grounds that the atmosphere around them is spot on for the plant, and from the time it germinates and grows on, it never gets disturbed. Therein lies our predicament, because a lot of people have said, why can't we recreate the same as in the wild? We can do the humidity, we can do this, that and the other. What we can't do is provide an organic media that doesn't break down. Therein is our failing. So all those who grow organically, non-organically, you know that is a solution, a possibility. Right, so another go with the scissors, and we'll have another one. Right, so that's the yellow one, or yellow ones we should say now, with an S on the end. And they get progressively worse now, because the rest were in quite a bad way. The yellow one was the strongest at the time. So this is the one with no label. So this is the dark coloured one, the one over there being the pink one. Again, I'm not messing these roots about too much at all. I'm just letting stuff fall off gently to see what we've got here. Lots of dead roots in the middle again. And with this one, I'm sure went in as two plants, and obviously it still is. Now what have we got here? What we've got here is a little new growth here. Obviously that was a growth. I don't know whether that's one that I've grown or not, but it's a very poor quality one. And I certainly don't like the look of the leaf on there, that's coming off. We've got a very old bulb there with no leaves, and then we've got this with poor quality leaves. This piece is not good. But it's got viable roots on it, believe it or not. These are not all dead. These are in here. Yeah, that bulb needs to come off. That one, leafless one, needs to come off. Alright, so that's a piece. And that's got reasonable roots. Do you know, I think all these plants need is a good media to get into, which they haven't got. They will have. I already know what I'm going to plant these in, and I haven't prepared it yet, so there'll be a gap while I do that, and it'll be something I haven't done before. But I mean, again here, this is a growth that I've grown. That was probably a tiny new growth when I got them, or appeared not long after. It hasn't done very well, but it did grow some roots. And now there's another new growth starting. Yeah? And again, we've got a manky old bit here. Got some scissors. So this section's dead. We'll have that off like we did before. That's like a section of, those are just basically the very oldest roots. And then what's left is not that bad. I've seen worse. This needs to get into something it's going to be happy growing in, and I think I may have it. So we could put it in the same category as the eyes. The eyes have it, and I'm going to give this a go at something different. No, that's got to go there. Let me just get that other piece out, because I didn't actually trim the manky roots off of here, which is most of them unfortunately on this bit. Just the roots on the older pseudobulbs really. Some of those may have been there when it was potted. I would imagine that's what there was. That's what was left. Right, so we could get some growth out of the rest of those, I think. Not ones with wiry bits like that though. And broken ones. Now it's a matter of seeing what comes out. There's a dead one. Right, sheaths off. That's where the new roots are, look. This little one starting there. Right, so those two are the dark one, that leaves one. These were going to go back in the same pots, but I may deem those pots too large. Depends whether I try and attempt to get everything back in one pot or not. Now this is the worst one of the lot. again, 2 plants. Now this is the one with the new growth, with some new roots, with some growing tips on. Well, we haven't seen much of that before, have we? Not on this little group. Right. Well, this bulb's going to have to come off on the same grounds as the rest of them. It's too low. To pot it with that still on there would mean burying it too low. So we can snip that. You know, these rhizomes are not pink. I mean, I'll show you one. There's no pink in there at all. Now, don't forget, if you find a plant that's got fusarium and you can kill it, then the new pieces will grow clean and won't have any pink in them. But the pink in the old bits don't disappear. I'm wondering whether I was imagining it when we did these last time. Who knows? Perhaps I'd had too many glasses of wine at the time. Well, it's on video, I could go back and have a look. That doesn't lie. Luckily with my camera, when I'm working out here in the kitchen at this sort of stuff, it doesn't play with colours. So if the pink was there, it was there. Right, now this has got some viable roots, not many. But what have we got? See, this bulb here again is too low, and it's got a nasty black hole in it, so that's going to have to come off. Looks like a slug or something took a bite out of that one. Right, so that gives me a little piece to plant. I could take this piece off, but that's going to leave a very, very weak little plant. It is attached, and it's got a leaf, albeit not a very good one. I'll leave it for now. It's something I could always push the scissors down in the media at a later date and just snip it off if I chose to. Right, so that didn't leave much of that plant, did it? Right, so I've got those separate in the sink. Now what I'm going to do is get rid of the rubbish. I still haven't got any newspaper. I've been to the shops so many times, and do you know what it is? It's in the back of my mind. I'm reluctant to buy a new newspaper to never bother reading, because I don't read newspapers. I just want to use it to cover my surface. This surface is hard. It'll wipe clean afterwards. It doesn't have to be, you know, I mean, I've got sterilising wipes, anti-bac wipes that will wipe this off afterwards, because this is where I prepare my food, or some of it. Right, so we'll have a clear up and we'll be back with a new type of media, roots washed off carefully. This comes from Michael McCarthy's instructions for the zygos. Zygo roots are incredibly fragile, not only brittle, but fragile in as much as if you poke them around a lot, you bruise them, and then they just fail, because the repot time seems to be death to many zygopetalums. You try and do your best for them, put them in some nice fresh media, and they just turn their flipping toes up. But there's a knack to it. Timing is imperative. There's a knack to it, and the media needs to be right. And that's what I'm going to do to these. I'm just going to rinse these off, and if a few bits of bark are still stuck on there, so be it. They can stay there. And then they're going to go in a totally new type of media, which I haven't used before, in a pot that I will choose once I've got these washed off and I can actually look at them and decide whether they're all going in individual pots as small plants, which gives me a lot more pots to faff around with. But I've proven many times before they root better in small pots. Simple as that. So we'll have a tidy up and I'll be back. Okay, so before we start choosing pots and stuff, the magic mix. We spent a lot of time faffing around getting this ready to use, and it has its uses, and I've now heard several people actually swear by this stuff to get good root systems going. Obviously there's a downside. It does break down. It is organic. At the end of the day, I grow with organic media. It's what I like. This will be a whole new ball game, so I'm just looking to see if there's any giant pieces in here that I'll just break down. So, Miltoniopsis are strange because although they have the roots look quite fleshy, they're delicate. They're not. They work like a fine root system, even though they don't look like it. Anyway, that's got some fibre in it. It's got tiny pieces, medium-sized pieces. There's no real giant pieces in there. So I need dry hands. And then we are going to add to that some perlite, or in my case sponge rock, which is giant perlite at the end of the day. So we'll add a good handful of that in there. And then we will play the hunt for the giant pieces and break them up, because I don't want them too big. So it's just looking for the really big pieces, breaking it in half. So that goes in, helps with aeration on the ground so this stuff doesn't break down. So whatever size piece goes in the media, that's the size it stays at. There's no reduction or breaking down. That's that. And then a substance that, if you look it up, charcoal has properties. It's not inert. It's using filtration systems to get muck out of water. And its purpose here is to help keep the media sweet. All organic media breaks down. Having charcoal around seems to slow the process dramatically, and therefore it lasts longer, which means you don't have to repot so often. It's a oh, dirty. So this is the magic mix. This is what we're going to use. So I'm just looking at the balance here. You don't want too much charcoal in there, but it needs to be enough to do its job. It absorbs things, elements, nasties. As I said, it's used in filtration systems, and that's its purpose here, is to absorb nasties and things. Plus, allegedly, it can help with stopping the build-up of salts, i.e. too much feed. Or can you imagine these are going to get too much feed? Honestly, they'll be lucky to get any, at least for some time. Grow me some decent roots and you can have some feed. Up until then you're not getting much at all, as I said, if any. So that's what I'm going to use. As I said, I spent a long time messing about with this coconut fibre, trying to get all the muck out of it and getting it clean enough to use, which I'm happy it is now. Charcoal's a relatively new thing, has a purpose, and the sponge rock, giant perlite, is just aeration and an element that never breaks down. So that is my one inert element. That lives for years, that stuff. Don't get the dust up your flipping nose in your lungs, it's evil, because it never breaks down. So you breathe that in, that's where it stays. Better not to get it in there in the first place. Quite damaging, the dust on that, so be careful if you use it. Right, so that's what they're going in as far as media is concerned. Now we've got to look at pots, and I'll take them one at a time, even though it's not one plant. So this is the pink one, or pink 2. That's got active roots on it. That will grow. It's also got a new growth that's just producing some roots. That will grow, guaranteed. This one also has a new growth that is tucked inside that leaf. So that leaf needs to come off. exposing the base of the new growth. So we've got two plants here. They're both small, and if I sit them like that together, the new growths are both on the outside, yeah? So they're both going to go in a single pot. Right, so let's go and get a pot suitable for a root size that big. Now, I've got a conundrum, because if I was going to plant those in moss to get new roots, that would go in the smallest possible pot I could get it in without breaking the roots. This is a new media, and the nurseries, the mass producers use this media, and when they sell their plants are not in small pots. Therein lies the problem sometimes, is because they're in larger pots they get overwatered, and that overwatering is not very often taking place at the nursery that's growing them. It's taking place after they leave the nursery with people that don't know what they're doing, and therein lies the demise of some of the roots in the pots. The media's getting old, and it gets soggy and the roots rot, and that is often blamed on the fact that they look over potted. But in this media you can get away with a slightly larger pot if you understand the watering and don't go mad. This is not the sort of thing. You've seen me water my bark. I hold the pot, I get my glass, I dunk it, and I pour water in over and over again, and it floods through and comes out the bottom. You do not do that with this media. It will hold one of those glasses of water. Now imagine how long it's going to take for that to get either used up or dry out. So this is more like a trickle type of watering. It's a knack. And we're going to get that knack together, because I am determined to grow Miltoniopsis. And I've got 6 months now to get some decent roots on these plants and get them going before the heat comes back. Right, I'm going to get a little pot. Well, that was a bit of luck. I don't expect to find something as suitable as that for each of the 3 sets of plants, but for these two going in together in a single pot, that pot's normally, I would say, too big, but for this media I think that's about right, and it's already got some extra holes in. Right, so we'll give this a go. I don't want too much in the bottom because I do have a few long roots, and I don't want to break them by trying to force it down in the pot. So loose, a little bit of a twist to make sure they sit in or seat in nicely, and here we go. Never used this stuff before. I don't want this squashed down. I want this full of air. Without being too silly, you have to bear in mind, you know, this is not the sort of oncidium that needs a lot of, oncidium type that needs a lot of air around its roots, but it does need some, and part of the air it will get is as a result of having a sponge rock in there. But what I don't want is loads of air gaps in here. I do want the roots in contact with something. The one thing that this probably hasn't got that the moss would have is the sterilising properties that moss has got, and I've still yet to find out. I mean, live sphagnum moss in the wild is a wound dressing. You know, people out on survival treks and things like that, you injure yourself, cut your leg or something like that, they'll get a handful of that moss and just whack it on there and tie it on. That is your dressing, and it sterilises, it cleans, it's good stuff, it works. But whether that zombie moss that we buy in the bags that's been treated to kill it, whether that has the same properties, probably not. Right, how are we doing? So always have a look in your pot. Let's give it a tap down. Well, there's air in there, it's not compacted. My new growths are sitting on the surface, just. So when they produce roots, they will go into the media and not head skyward. Just put a couple of extra little bits around that piece, make sure it's got something near its base. And it doesn't even need staking. See, that pot to me looks a bit big for what's in it, but that's how it's going to be. So that's one done. Oh, that deserves a drink. This is the point where you ask yourself, am I being brave or am I being stupid? Have I got the nerve to carry on doing something I've never done before and videoing it for all to see? That bit I don't mind. You know, I learn by making mistakes and in some cases watching other people that have already made them and try not to do them myself. Yeah? I've heard good stuff about this media. I haven't used it before. This could be the end of my 3 Miltoniopsis, but it could be their making. And I bring you along with me. You get to see whether it works or not. In fact, I've just decided that because lots of people have trouble with Miltoniopsis, it's not just me, little tykes, I'm going to set up a playlist for these 3. I've got a feeling I might already have. If I can go back and find the original video where we got these out of their pots and decided they probably had fusarium and they had lousy roots, blah blah blah. If I can go back and find that video, we'll stick it in a playlist as the start, and then we'll keep our eye on these in a playlist so that they're all nicely gathered together. I think a lot of people with YouTube channels underestimate the use of playlists. I've just spent a long time looking for a video for Lynn to try and get to somebody that's, let's put it this way, a novice as far as the internet is concerned. And Lynn spent time with the guy, getting him up and running so that he can join in a Zoom meeting and that sort of stuff. And to get him onto YouTube, she wanted to use the video that I sent round to the Wessex Orchid Society. Do you think I could flipping find it? But between us we found it, and eventually it got sent and emailed to the guy, and hopefully he'll watch it. And some people watch a YouTube video and it does nothing for them, and they've got no intention of trying to find any more. It just washes over them, they don't like it or whatever. And I can understand meeting in person and dealing with real people. I know YouTube is real people, but on a video it's like watching TV, isn't it? Like actors, I suppose. But yeah, playlists are useful for gathering stuff together, and in comparison to the number of actual videos you've got on your channel, I hate to think how many I've got, it's thousands I suspect. But the number of playlists isn't. So to search through my playlists and find sets, they're very useful, they really are. Right, so what have we got here then? We've got quite a large bulb. This has got some reasonable roots, a new growth that's just starting roots. You're coming off, mate. I don't like the look at that leaf. It shouldn't be that colour. Right, so that's better. Now that's a nice little piece. That could go in a pot on its own. And what one are we dealing with there? That was the pink one. That's the yellow one. So this is the other one. I'm going to put proper labels on this. Now that's a nice little plant to grow on. That growth didn't work out too bad and grew some roots, and it's now got another one coming. That's a nice plant in its own right. And so is that. So this time I'm going to plant these separately. This is, I forget the actual name, but this has an incredibly dark colour for a Miltoniopsis. It's not black, but it is a very, very deep colour. Having two of them means possibly somebody else gets one down the line, if it lives. And they fancy a go at a Miltoniopsis. So I'll go and find two pots for that. That can go in a reasonably small pot. You know, that is just a couple of bulbs. That one will need a slightly bigger pot because it hasn't actually got a bad root system. So let's give it some room to move. So let's go and find some pots for those two. Well, that was a Homer Simpson moment. Go! Why keep walking in there to get a pot and having to shut the camera off when I could bring them out here? Go! Right, so we need a smallish pot for that one. Without being too small. It looks a little big, but with this media, that's what it's going to get. Which means the bigger bit might get an even larger pot. I want these to go in here with room to move, to enable them to grow on and not have to be repotted again for a while, hopefully. Obviously not going to have enough mix to do all of these plants, but I've got plenty of it. Oh, that's a horrible sound. Whenever this sponge rock goes in a mix, it crunches. It sounds like you're crushing your roots. So it's just that sound. Sounds like the roots are going. Now, crushing roots has a distinctly different sound. Usually accompanied by some choice words. If you realise you're doing it soon enough. Got that bit in there. Right, so that's the base of our plant. On top of the media. Doesn't need staking. Let's give it a tap down. Yeah, that's fine, that's that one done. We're getting through them now, aren't we? So this is the one that hasn't got a label. I've got to go steady now because if I'm using multiple pots we're going to have some with no labels here. Right, now what are we going to do with this? This needs to go in something a bit bigger. Something like that's got a see the different air, I mean that's a flat bottomed pot. That's got a fat air cone with a little trench around the outside of it that serves not much of a purpose, but it's got some good slots in it. And then that's got a traditional air cone, which is not very big, but has some very big holes in the bottom of the pot. Ideal for roots to get out of and die. I'll go with that one. Right, and I definitely won't have enough media, so we will go and use up the rest of this that's been in soak. I might have to put some more into soak in a minute, but let's just get this bit done first. So some of that. A bit more of that. And a bit more of this. Something like that. So these proportions don't need to be exact. I mean, I know people, I have sat and watched people at their place measuring media in exact measures of pots, you know, like 5 parts, so 5 potfuls brushed off absolutely level, one of those, and then another one brushed absolutely level. Do you think the plant really knows the difference? That to me is just faff. I don't need that. Enough things in my life that can be deemed faff, like Zoom meetings and things. That's faff. Although we've got the hang of that now, I think, thanks to some help of some very nice people yesterday. That was kept a little quiet because it was done on a first come first serve, not favouritism or anything. It was just I wanted half a dozen people to join me in a Zoom meeting with the intention of ironing out my worries. But you can't do that on your own. You need people to join in a meeting so that you can try different settings and they can talk to you. You can talk to them and say, right, I'm going to do this now, and they see what you see and can make comments on it, or not if they're muted. power. But yeah, very, very grateful for the people that did join me in that meeting. It ironed out most of my worries, and one of my other worries I ironed out myself on my own this morning, which was, you know, I said some orchid societies in the States have asked me to do a talk via a Zoom meeting, and I've said I can't do a talk in the dark, which it will be at my end. I've run out of media again, I have to mix some more up. But what I did say was if I could pre-record a video talk, you know, just a normal video in my case, that could be the talk, and then I'll be there live to do the questions afterwards, which seems like a good way of doing it as far as I'm concerned. And I tried that this morning, and playing a video on a Zoom meeting is nothing more than sharing a screen, and it just pops up. So you get your video ready to run basically on your computer. So it's sat there waiting to go on pause. You just hit share screen. Anything you've got on your computer will pop up as an optional screen to share. You click on your video and then click play, and away it goes. And everybody can see it at the same time. I like that. Right, so I'm going to have to mix up quite a bit more stuff now, and I'll sort my pots out. But you get the gist of this. In fact, I won't bother filming the rest. There's no point. I'm only going to repeat myself, aren't I? But we've got our pink ones together in a single pot. The dark coloured one is going in 2 pots, one of which is quite large to accommodate the good root system that it's got, or better root system that it's got. And then the yellow one is the one I've got the most pieces of. That will probably end up in at least 2 pots and maybe 3. I don't know. But we'll leave it at that. As I said, there's no point in filming all of them. It's a repetitive process at the end of the day once you've seen the principle. So you're welcome to leave comments like they'll be dead in a month, which I will promptly put a heart on and ignore completely. You know, but we'll keep our eye on these. Apart from the heat in the summer, which with my humidity and suitable shading, Miltoniopsis should survive that. There's people growing these in hot environments, the difference being they're often growing them outside. They got that fresh air around them, there's a difference. So I'll get the rest of these potted up and I'll pop back at the end and just show what I've done. I'll be back. Okay, there we go, the finished job. All with proper labels, individual pots labelled properly. This was the pink one. That ended up with 2 plants in the 1 pot. So that's that one. That's Morgant. These are all, they came from Eric Young Foundation, which is based on one of the Jersey Islands, which always have a French theme. So all of their own hybrids have always got a French name. You can virtually guarantee that across the board, whether it's Restrepias, in this case Miltoniopsis, or whatever. This one is Noirmont. Noir being French for black, I believe, so this is the dark one. That went into 2 separate pots. Both have got new growths. Yeah, this one went in quite a large pot in the end that had not a bad root system. Yeah, and then the yellow one, which is D'Auvergne, I don't really know how to pronounce that, D apostrophe, and then Auvergne, said French, not English. That went into 3 separate pots. This is effectively a back bulb division. There are no new growths, but it's got 3 leaved bulbs, and having had its new growth separated off, I'd expect this to now produce a growth from somewhere, maybe more than 1. And then this little piece with its new growth, not a very big root system, so you know it's got room to expand, and then another one here with a new growth. So that's the 3 yellow ones in effect. That's the dark coloured one, and that's the big pink one. And I don't know why I can justify this, but I've just got a good feeling about these. I've got a feeling these are going to grow. We will see. See you next time.